in order to achieve the end goal of having a board-approved local control accountability annual update at the end of the year. And so the first half of the year on our timeline focuses on what we are doing to align our plans. Obviously, the district goals were approved tonight, and this timeline is one of the items on the district goals for 1A actually. And we are implementing the plan every single day. So we are doing that, and we're going to be analyzing and assessing our progress throughout this year. So when we get to December, January, and February, we're going to begin to really look at this new state template that the state we've learned, has developed for the annual update or the annual review update. You'll hear both languages. And so everything that we're doing this year will go into that new template. And we'll be transferring some information from the template we have to the new template with new information. And as we do that, the process for this annual update follows the same process or a similar process that we did last year, where we are continuing to have input from various stakeholders. So once we get the information transferred and we're doing some initial analysis and looking at the effectiveness of our current plans, then when we get to April, we'll begin to have input sessions again with our various stakeholders, similar to what we had last year. And so if you were to look under April on the second page of the timeline, you'll see that throughout that month we'll meet with teachers, we'll meet with our union representation, parents, our English learner parents, and student leadership. We will also be, through this process, identifying the expenditures for our unduplicated counts. This is the supplemental funds we receive for our English learner students, our foster youth, and our free and reduced lunch students. As part of this process, we will need to have a public hearing. And so we have scheduled in this plan, in this timeline, to have that public hearing at a board meeting in May. And following that, we will again have a comment period where the public can provide comments and receive responses to the annual review update. And then when we get to June, that is when we would bring the board, to the board, a revised annual update of the LCAP with all of this input and comments from the public. The annual update needs to be approved before the budget is approved, and so that's why you see it on the first June meeting. That's our goal. This is a draft timeline as we learn information throughout the year. Throughout the timeline, you'll see there's LCAP trainings provided by the County Office of Education and Planning sessions. Because it's still new, we are learning a lot about how to proceed at those training sessions, and so there may be some additions or changes or modifications, but at this time this is what we are using as our guide to have a completed LCAP annual update for you by the end of June 2015.
Thank you. Questions from the board? In the timeline of January 2015, under ongoing, is that supposed to say 14-15 or 15-16? I assume 14-15?
It's actually supposed to say 14-15 in the first cell, and the second cell it should say 2015-16.
Oh, 15-16.
Because we are working on one plan, but we are building next year's.
Great. I think it's ironic. The state calls it local control, and then they give you a template that you have to fill out.
So is it just updating the LCAP that's in place, or is it like a separate document?
It would be updating our current LCAP, which is a 3-year plan.
And like showing what the changes are? Or...
Based on our first year, we'll be analyzing our progress And there may be some changes for as we move forward, so yes, but we need to see the template first to understand specifically what other additions there will be. It's supposed to be available to us in January.
So I would, I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but even though we're updating the plan, I think it's important that we think about how we're communicating to our stakeholders, whether it's parent clubs or teachers or all the stakeholder groups in the process. And I think we should try to do a little more of that this year than we did last year. I feel that as a board, that's our responsibility to make sure we're communicating the avenues for input from our stakeholders. And I think it was not as clear to people last year, and that we should make sure we try to incorporate that in the timeline this year.
So, sir, I had a thought, I think, along those lines of in March, it seems like because I've talked to, so that the group here knows, I've talked to a lot of different board members locally and about this particular deal for the last, call it, a little over a year, right? And some superintendents and a few other folks who just, I guess, are LCAP geeks, maybe. I don't know what their titles were, but they knew a lot about how this was rolling out and everything. And I say that in the kindest way. Getting that, seeing that in April, that meeting with all stakeholder groups, well, that's just fundamental in the process. I also think there's a value to sometime in March, or once we have the template and we can actually articulate what it is, to get really the community, whether it's an information evening or something, just so that folks know what it is that we're doing outside of, they see this timeline and that's all great, there's a lot of acronyms, but there is a more involved process to where the accountability really arrives truly in April, May, June, and yet a lot of folks are asking questions of how do they get the feedback loop in, what is the timeline, how does it work, when do I come with any input. And so if we were able to, our district was able to educate our community on our understanding of the process outside of a board meeting and a timeline printed, but actually what the LCAP is, sometime in February, March, I think it would go a long way to that communication that Sarah's speaking of, and it would also probably, invigorate the conversation that happens in April with the stakeholder groups. For those that are kind of not necessarily represented, but they're community members and local control. To your point, Matt, I mean, there are folks that don't have kids right now in the district that have asked me over the last year, what is local control? I don't have kids here anymore, I'm not a parent, but it's, tax monies, public education, what are you doing differently? So since it is new to us, I understand why we had to hit the ground and run fast and just kind of get something going last year, but it seems like we have it's November, we have a vision out in front of us that we could get out there, and whether people choose to show up or not, I mean, that's their own bag, but putting it out there, I think, is really kind of this group's, including the superintendent's charge. So if that rings along the lines of what you're saying.
Yes, I agree with you, absolutely.
Other than that, I mean, it seems it's a lot to do in a very regimented way. And I understand a lot of it, but I don't know that other people do, so. That was my only comment.
Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. My microphone, I think, is out of batteries, so I'll speak up. The green light is gone.
I had a similar thought, what Tyson was saying, but about making sure we are reaching not just the specific groups, but also getting to the public input, trying to reach community members, but knowing how few people would show up probably at an informational meeting, I don't know. I was thinking more like, what if we could get an ad or an article or something in the news that would, because the website has a place for people to give public comment, and I'm assuming that it's still what Kathy is, the website, our Orinda school district website would still have an area that people could give public comments about the LCAP plan, like we did last year. Is that one way that we would be still trying to receive?
Yes, we do have a page for the local control plan right now. We don't have public comment at this moment.
But we could put that back in.
Yes.
So I was thinking, maybe if we did some sort of ad or article or something in the Orinda News, which would reach, probably more people in the community to discuss the LCAP and let them know that that spot on our website exists. So that could be a way of trying to reach out and actually maybe do a better job of reaching more community members that wouldn't necessarily, get a superintendent's email or come to a meeting. And would be a fairly easy way to try to get that feedback.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That would be a good idea, but I think it would be still good to have a meeting as well, because you're right, community members might not come to a meeting, they might read the article and they might comment, but then there would be parents and others that are more involved that would probably appreciate a meeting, so I think we do.
Well, I think there will be, because this is meet with all stakeholder groups, includes parents and others, so I would assume
What
that
month are
those
you
might.
looking at?
Well, yeah, Julie, the April, my take on that was, that's probably a coordinating council,
Well, so maybe
site
like parent
councils and
club.
things.
Okay, I
Yeah.
was thinking more parent clubs, but maybe.
And and this may be just my take and talking to different folks and what I've gotten, but it's beyond, call it teachers, OEA, parents, student leadership. It's, the LCAP applies to really everybody within the bounds of that
Well,
district.
that's why I was saying that piece, and then I was thinking parent clubs, and of course, if there's a superintendent communication about it, then that would reach the entire parent community. Not just people who show up for a parent club meeting or a parent club president or something at a coordinating council meeting. So I think there are legitimate ways, easier ways of reaching all the parents. It's just like trying to get that community piece that was outside of that.
Yeah, that's the tougher piece,
75% of our Orinda, I think.
We do have communication in the district goal for 3 times a year, November, March, and June. So I'm wondering if I'm hearing that that should be in the timeline as well. Add that.
Yep. The district goal where?
It's 1C. Provide communication to staff and parents on the progress and accomplishments of LCAP implementation, November, March, and June.
Put that in your timeline, the LCAP timeline. It's a good idea.
Sold.
Yeah, I think that would be good. So, yeah, I think the discussion here is all aiming the same way of I think we have consensus here of, that's fine to do the actual meetings probably in April, but, like I think this board has said before, showing up to a meeting, without any truck information is harder. So, pushing some of that information, stuff back into March or even February, and again, if we can explicitly say that in the plan, that would be good. And I think giving news is a good idea too, to get the broader community, even just to point people to the website, because they're always looking for material.
Yeah, I think this April meeting is specifically to get input from these stakeholder groups, and I think we need a informational meeting in March to explain it and also to allow and encourage people to give their input. If they're not a parent club president, for example, if they're a parent that's just an involved parent that wants to give input, they should also be able to go to a meeting and hear about it rather than just read something in the newspaper or on the website. So maybe that's what you just said, Chris, but I just wanted to reiterate that I think having a meeting earlier than April
Well,
would
and
be
Kathy's
really
talking about
important.
adding the communication to November, March,
Right, well, when I read that bullet that she just mentioned, that to me sounds like the district is reporting on what we're doing for LCAP, and it isn't saying, it's more like, it says, provide communication on the progress and accomplishments. It sounds like what we've already done in last year. It doesn't sound like what we want to do now for next year. It doesn't sound like moving forward, so I'm not sure if that's what that bullet is. What I'm talking about is moving forward for deciding on what the
well, maybe it's
changes
making
are
sure
for
that
the
a piece
LCAP.
of that communication has to do with, you know,
I think that's
encouraging
the same
feedback,
thing,
getting
because this is a
information,
rolling
getting information.
process.
Okay, well, that
Iterative.
bullet is about providing communication. She could provide communication and there might not be a meeting. I'm saying I think it's really important to have a meeting. It doesn't matter how many people show up, I think it's important to offer parents a meeting to come to. And you, in addition to providing communication.
But don't they have that opportunity at the board meeting?
At a formal board meeting where you're doing the public hearing where the draft.
Isn't that the whole point of the public hearing?
No, that is not the same thing, Matt. A public hearing, sure, they can come and give their input on the LCAP that's already been developed, and it's at the last step and you're about to approve it. But that isn't really an effective way for someone to give input. If they really want to give input that is significant, you have to give input earlier. You can't wait until the public hearing. That's just not effective. And if you look at what other districts have done, a lot of other districts have had meetings earlier than we did last year. Yes, everyone is required to have a public hearing, but that isn't an effective way to get
That's the
input.
requirement, okay.
Yeah,
So I mean, so what I'm saying is getting the process out there sooner so people know it's coming versus they're, you know, reacting to what
I
happened.
thought I heard Sarah saying they don't have an opportunity. I just want to make sure because there's the, obviously.
yeah, there is the public hearing, yes.
Good.
Okay. But that, I don't feel that that's effective for what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you for this discussion.
Mhm.
This is on for discussion only. And we have 2014-15 professional development report. Also Kathy.
Okay, so I'm going to provide you with a report on the overall professional development goals and plan for 2014-15. And so we have generally brought a report to you each year, and it has been a plan that is built on other plans as to how we proceed forward. And so just in talking about the LCAP, our professional development learning plan in the LCAP is actually goal 2. And it does focus on aligning student learning to the Common Core state standards and the next generation science standards. It's its own goal. And with that, it really is to provide direct support in supporting our teachers and providing ongoing professional development that is focused in the classroom. So, bless you. So these essentially are bullets that I've tried to capture throughout the plan what we have listed in the LCAP, which are focus areas. Again, with the Common Core state standards, even though we have English language arts and mathematics of the Common Core state standards, they cross other subjects. And so teachers are talking about Common Core state standards, and so how do we support that work? And so we have in the plan the various consultants that we've been working with, but we also have how we're going to utilize teachers to lead staff development, how they can collaborate to share innovative practices, how we're going to support our brand new teachers, and train our administrators to support our teachers. How we are going to engage coaching at a deeper level, and we have summer training in there, the analysis of student progress, and the differentiation for students exceeding standards, and then how do we engage the 21st century learning skills and tools that students and teachers need to implement this work. So that's in our LCAP in a nutshell, and that really aligns with our previous plans and our current plans. The curriculum plan, professional development goal, really focuses on the opportunities for teacher collaboration to enhance the student knowledge and the deeper learning for implementation of the Common Core. We're in the second year of that curriculum plan. And the instructional component in our tech plan goal is to support teachers and students in increasing, expanding, and using tools of technology to enhance achievement and exceed their academic and digital requirements. So it really is looked at as a tool and not as a separate subject. So you may recognize this ARCH, which is something that we have been using as a framework, an instructional framework for integration of the 21st century skills, with the base of our professional development and curriculum at the bottom, but then supported by how we can implement the 4 C's of 21st century learning that students need to have in their problem solving and in their critical thinking and skill building. So with that, we have also been engaging teachers over the years to really help guide our professional development. As you can see on the left, the Common Core state standards cross over all subjects, and it was a very interesting place for me to be at a county meeting where state representatives were talking to us and saying this is a very unique time in our history in education. Never before have we been revamping so much all at one time, and all districts in California feel it, all schools, all teachers, all administrators. And so what our efforts have been here, if you look at the right, is to gather teacher input, and we've done this in 2013 with the development of the curriculum plan, in 2014 with the LCAP, and now just this past fall through the curriculum committee, we want to work with our teachers to say, how can we build the capacity without having every teacher involved in all subject areas through the switch? So we're really seeking, what are the priorities? Where are we? When and how can we implement? And so we're building on that to continue to create our plan for this year. We really are at a place where we're growing and advancing as professionals. And so we have our staff development days, and we have 3 full days this year and 2 half days. In addition to that, there is coaching and in-class demonstrations that take place weekly at all sites. Our teachers requested summer sessions, and so we held summer sessions this year in mathematics and technology, and of course the Reading and Writing Project Institute. We have teachers that prefer after-school workshops. We started this year distance learning with the Teachers College Reading and Writing Workshop, so that is taking place right now. And we have some conferences as applicable. So with that, what does the content look like? Well, as we're growing as professionals, we have our new teacher trainings that were really vital this year with the large number of new teachers that entered into our district. And so before school begins and began in language arts and history, just really the nuts and bolts of our programs. And then providing that ongoing support. That is happening right now with our district literacy coaches, with buddy teachers, and with BITSA mentors at each of our sites to help with backwards planning, where we're going, modeling lessons, in-class coaching, and then the initial preparation that's taking place for what students will need to know to manage the CAS test for English language arts. And then as we are advancing as professionals, we're at all different tiers of growing and learning right now. We've had the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project with us now for 7 years. And so we are really at a point where we are balancing and seeing how can we advance and not only use our consultants, but use experts within the district. And so through the distance learning experience, teachers are actually coming together and they are working with staff developers from New York, and then they're actually sharing out those practices with their colleagues. That happened today actually at 2 grade levels. We are combining at the middle school level not only our core focus of units of study, but merging that with support from the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project. We'll continue with assessment training and differentiated unit planning. That specifically supports our combination teachers who need to really look at how they differentiate for the different grades of students in their classrooms. Classroom observations and learning walks, ongoing Common Core standard support, long-range planning, and we're starting to look at our history social science curriculum this week with a very small focus group of 1 teacher rep from each school. If we look at mathematics, this has been a process for us, and I know that you've heard time and again that we have been working, just as all teachers and educators throughout the state, with the new Common Core state standards and limited textbooks or materials to guide us. But so our teachers have really networked and come together to really study the Common Core standards and learn about what Orinda students need. And with that, this summer, the grade levels met to develop their own scope and sequence for what students need to know by the end of the year. They looked at those mathematical practices, and we developed and shared resources for math workshop, and that's where we're differentiating for where kids are in their conceptual instruction. We are looking at our assessments constantly and revising them constantly. And once we go through the CASP assessment, we'll have a better grasp of where we need to be. Probably the big focus this year is our math adoption training. We have teachers both in the elementary and at the middle school level who are really taking time to be trained and to analyze and to implement training materials to see what will work for our teachers and for our students here in Orinda. And through that, we are participating with the Silicon Valley Leadership Institute, which provides resources as well as professional development. And we are articulating across the district on a Google Doc. Of course, the math at OIS is continually being looked at and revised as teachers are becoming trained, and then we'll be having the CASP assessment. Science, similarly, this is another cohort of teachers. So each area we're looking at teachers who can help to support this work. And we've talked about Bayside earlier tonight. We actually have a K-8 science articulation team, which is made up of Bayside teachers, but it's also made up of other teachers across the board. This group is developing a vision for the district, but they're also training with Lawrence Hall of Science staff. Through this, our Bayside teachers and our Bayside Masters group, which is teachers continuing this work, are working to share with colleagues. And part of their projects are to develop workshops, not only at their sites, but through our staff development days. We're having training on curriculum that will support the work of next generation science standards, particularly in grades 4 through 6 with FOSS, and then our parent education, which is also a training for all of us. That will happen on Wednesday. So I mentioned that technology is seen as an instructional tool for the content. The trainings in technology are now leveled. They're based from the novice to the advanced in how to use the tools, but more importantly, in the instruction, we start with what we are doing currently in the classroom, and we use the various tools available to us to address those 4 C's I mentioned earlier: the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. It's really about engaging students in the content. And so within the trainings, we have presentation tools that are shared with teachers and introduced, and instructional resources for students. The collaboration tools primarily come through Google Apps for Education. We have our own account here in Orinda that is available only to Orinda teachers and to students that who are collaborating using Google Apps. Then our communication tools, and then creativity tools. You can see I've shared with you previously that we have the Orinda OUSD homepage where teachers can access the resources for instruction or for research or for information on Common Core standards and other activities that focus on what they need for student instruction. And these are the links to some of those, the OUSD teacher homepage, as I mentioned, and then here are a few others that have become the textbook, I guess you would say, that was available many years ago. But we're in transition with having both teacher resources that are in paper and teacher resources that are online. A lot of these are built by teachers and information shared by teachers. So as we proceed in 2014-15, navigating the road for teaching and learning with the new assessments, our staff development plan is still growing and changing. As I mentioned, we just received the input from all staff, and so the curriculum committee is analyzing that for priorities. But we do know from the state perspective in preparing our students and teachers that these bullets up here are some areas that we need to pay attention to as we move into the spring for the state testing. In our professional development, in all of it, we strive to be collaborative, supportive, we know it's ongoing, and to keep it focused on the classroom. So that's my report.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Kathy, that was really impressive. Thank you very much. And I think the result of all that is that our kids end up getting a great education because of your work with teachers and with administrators that's on site, as well as C and Andy and all those other resources we have in our district. So it's just really, really impressive. I appreciate the superintendent getting on the agenda for information, and I just really appreciate all your hard work. Not just in the presentation, but more importantly on professional development in our district to help support our teachers in educating our kids. And I think it it's a significant investment, especially in time, but as well in outside bringing in outside resources, but I think it's an investment that's worth it. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I have a question. Thanks, that was a really good report and a lot of information, and looks like there's a lot going on, which we knew. One thing that you mentioned on the background section about collecting teacher input for prioritizing staff development needs. Can you just discuss a little bit about that input process, and does that go out to the whole teacher community, or is it going to representatives from that community, or how does that work?
Yes, so this year particularly in September, the curriculum committee gathered and we talked about what is it that we want and need to know about prioritizing the staff development, because there is just so much and we want to find balance and we want to provide something that's meaningful for where teachers are. So with that, the curriculum committee went back to their school sites, and for a period of 3 weeks they had time to gather teacher input from each of their sites and bring it back. And at our October meeting we compiled all of the information, as you can see from one of the charts. And we are continuing now to look at that. We've gathered it from everybody. We discussed it. We prioritized and looked at what was common. And now we are going to continue to narrow the focus for the spring. And so we're still in process.
And is the sense that teachers are getting the professional development that they need and the support they need?
Similarly, everything that we've shared that has been in our plans has been what teachers are saying that they need, they want to continue. There's an enthusiasm that is present when you're sitting at a table among teachers who are able to talk about their learning. There's, with the distance learning that has just started, and whenever we start something new, you know, there's bugs to work out, and communicating with New York to California on distance learning, even the time change, you know, when and how we do it. But immediately, the teachers participating said, we want to share this with our colleagues. And so they said, how can we organize that? And that's really something to hear. It's whenever there is collaboration and input, it does take time. And we've heard about that. It takes time to talk about what we're learning and how we implement it. So I think the big conversations are, how do we do that? What does it look like, given that we have certain designated days for staff development? How do we fit it all into the calendar so that it's not an add-on but embedded? And that's what we're grappling with right now. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question regarding the funding. What about, I don't know if it's in a different pot, but the Common Core Expenditure Fund, what about the instructional materials? Are you, could you say something about how that's working this year in terms of, are the teachers getting the materials they need, whatever that is, for teaching Common Core?
Yes, so the Common Core Expenditure Fund was $499,995, and it was approved last January. It was separated into 3 areas. So the area that was designated for professional development is on the board agenda. So that's specifically for professional development. And so that's what we are using and tapping into for all of what we're doing right now. The instructional materials component of that fund was another component, and we have been spending that. There's money that has been allocated out to the school sites specifically, as we had said it would, to build our reading libraries with nonfiction texts to align with our units of study this year, because those have changed to align with the Common Core. So that's a project that teachers are working with their principals and at their grade levels at the school sites between now and April to really take inventory of what they have and to build their libraries there. The funds were also set aside for math manipulatives. However, we're learning through our pilot adoptions. We're being handed a wealth of manipulatives. It may be what we need, more than what we need in some areas, so we need to be filling the gaps in those particular areas. But that money for the instructional material allocation is continuing to be spent.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for explaining that.
I have one question about you talked about the new teachers when they come into the district, and be they from a new teacher versus a new teacher from another district. To what extent is our professional development with them sort of our Orinda spin of doing things, or how much is getting them familiar with Columbia Teachers Readers, you know, completely, or next generation science, or how much is what? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I'd say that there's a lot that's taking place there, especially with regard to the support that our coaches give early on, even before school starts, to our new teachers, so that they can at least start the year with a basic foundation of what the units of study would look like in the classroom, what a mini lesson looks like. And so there's much of that going on, and then there's just the ongoing daily, almost weekly communication. But also at the school sites, there's teachers supporting teachers within the grade levels, and so there's a lot that's taking place with buddy teachers or just colleagues supporting each other. But it is organized, it's not just happenstance. And so our coaches keep a pulse on that, on what our new teachers need to know as they're moving forward, especially if they haven't been to an institute for the project. So prior to the school year, we have days set aside where we do specific trainings, and then there's actually one-on-one trainings and class demonstrations that our coaches provide as well, that with follow-up discussions. And then there's the BITSA program on top of that. And so we have BITSA mentors who are supporting the teachers in the same way, but actually in a different way. They're supporting them to in their requirements as a teacher, but tying that to what's happening in the classroom, helping them to identify learning plans and what they're going to focus on in action plans, helping them to observe and analyze students and how they're progressing. So I would say that we have systems in place, but more importantly, we have teachers that care about the teachers that they're working with. So from my perspective, I'm very impressed with what I see.
Other questions from the board? Any comments from the public on the side?
Josh, I know you're present. I just want to reiterate something that Kathy just said. Teachers really reaching out and supporting other teachers. A lot of that's going on, so I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Any further discussion? Item gone for discussion, so. Okay, now is the time for board reports. Opportunity for board members to give a brief report on activities from prior weeks.
I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Jaconet and 3 different sets of Parents Club presidents, co-presidents, over the last week. And they were just very productive meetings. I think everybody was happy with the process and with the level of communication. And it was just very encouraging. And it was really appreciated by the Parents Club presidents, really expressed their appreciation. And I just wanted to express the superintendent how much I appreciate his participation and the exchange of information that took place. And I think it can only move to build stronger relationships. So thank you very much, Joe.
I don't do board reports very much, but I was volunteering at Delray, working my daughter's Halloween party, and there was a fire alarm that went on. Something about a popcorn machine. And I just want to say that even though it was in the middle of all the Halloween parties, you don't usually get to see this in action, but the kids, I mean, I'm sorry that Mr. Steve, I know he was here, but I guess he left, but how organized and, the kids knew exactly what to do, where to go, we're all very well behaved, and really, it was nice to see it in action, because it really was, I felt good seeing that happen like that, so it was an interesting little extra for our Halloween.
Well dressed evacuation.
Yeah, just, like I said, they were all sugared up, but they still did a good job.
Any other reports? Okay, Dr. Jaconet.
Thank you. Matt actually took my first item because I was going to thank both you and Matt for helping out with the Parent Club President meetings and dedicating your time and your busy work schedules to do that. So thank you. I agree with you, Matt. Those were very productive, helpful meetings. And then Julie just mentioned the drill. It's always great when you can see that happen, that, the effect of doing the practice and so forth pays off. And as you know, since the last board meeting, we did do our shakeout drill. And I think we had every school with a scenario and the district office out practicing. Again, we participated with the city and tried the connection with communications with the city command center. So we learned some more off of that drill as we do every year, and we get to practice it, and it was a great exercise and collaboration. And then the last item just to mention is I think the successful parent education nights that we have had going on and that will continue to go on. And I want to thank the teachers and staff members and Kathy Marshall for the work in putting those on. We have a really good stream of information going out to parents on a number of topic areas, and our next one is science coming up on Wednesday night at Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackman. Future agenda items, is there any future agenda items that we brought up?
Well, we're supposed to have a facilities workshop, I assume that's still in the works. And,
You have the date, right, sir?
yeah, I
Okay.
have the date. I just wanted to say, I hope we specifically have on that, you know, the air conditioning and the solar, that whole continuation of the discussion we had last time. And the portable buyout topic. And then, I don't know if it has to be next time, but we need to have LCFF, the local control accountability plan, on our agenda again, maybe in a couple of months. Because I think we need to keep talking about that in terms of how we're doing it. So that's just a request for a future agenda also on that. Thanks.
We will re-adjourn to closed session at this time.
Yeah.
Some kids are just kind of, yeah.
Oh, yes. So,
Jason, do you play the game like that, or does it work? I think we were racing a car, or?
oh, sorry.